Hey y'all, and welcome back. Episode 21, Gotham Graffiti Podcast. We are here. My name is Gunnar, and this is my cousin Scott.
What's up, y'all?
We no longer are having the lighting difficulties.
Yeah.
We got that taken care of, so we're back to normal setup.
Our rave can continue now.
Our rave can continue. This week, a little bit of a shorter episode. We kind of had really long ones the last 2 weeks, and so we kind of want to just keep this one shorter for y'all, trim the fat a little bit. So what we've got is we're going to finish out our DCAU slate rankings with our 4 through 1. We have the same movies in the 4 slot.
Yeah.
You know that if you've watched the last 2 episodes, but have them ordered differently.
Yes.
We'll have a read of the week as always, and then we are starting the first of the month cycle with our rendition of verses. So we will be returning to verses. The record is currently 4-1.
Yep.
See if Scott can continue as he won the last time we did this.
We're hoping. I feel confident with my list.
So we're going to jump straight into it. So why don't you go ahead and let us know where you have at your 4th slot of the DCAU.
Yeah, we're going in ascending order as we've done last couple episodes. So for my top 4 DCAU movie is Batman vs. Robin. So I really enjoyed this film. I think,
really quick, I just wanted to say this just because of our list and how they may be ordered. Really quickly, just so we're all clear, since we're really coming down to the nitty gritty, this is our personal list.
Yes.
We're not ranking these based off of what we think is the best movies.
Yes.
It's our list. Just continue. I just wanted to get that out before we get hate in the comments for something on a list. But
But I think this is for as far as besides maybe Justice League Dark Apocalypse, this might be the most growth that Damian gets throughout a story.
Yeah.
Which again, I've made it very clear that Damian is not my favorite Robin. But I can appreciate the fact that the journey they took him on throughout the slate of movies that we got. First of all, Court of Owls, obviously.
Right.
I think, isn't this the only movie that the Court of Owls are in? Or is there one other movie that they're in?
No, this is it. This was the only... I think this was the first media that the Court of Owls were in that was not the comic run.
Yeah.
So this was,
Yeah, so Talon's a great villain. You get to see Batman and Nightwing team up at the very end with the whole, that whole sequence of the Talons attacking Wayne Manor.
What do you call it? Because you'll know. What's the kind of shot called where they do the angle starts here at Batman and it rotates around this way to Nightwing and then does another rotation. It's not a cut. It's the camera's rotating.
Oh, I don't think there's a specific name for it. I think it's just a spin or shot.
A spin shot.
Yeah.
But that shot,
or
to
a rotary
your point,
shot or something like that. Yeah.
Done
But
so
yeah,
well.
seeing when Batman and Talon finally throw hands, because we've talked about before, the Bucky and Captain America fight in Winter Soldier. It's just as good, if not better. Yeah. And I know it's animation, but still, that's a top tier fight. But yeah, I mean, I can't really go on a whole lot about this movie because I haven't seen it in forever. But just from what I remember, the stuff with the Court of Owls, Damian's arc, Batman and Nightwing teaming up at the very end, Batman just holding his own against Talon and eventually overcoming. It's a very well crafted Court of Owls movie, and especially the fact that it's really the only, other than the comics and Gotham Knights, we haven't really gotten any Court of Owls stuff. So that's why it's in the top 4 for me. It's very well put together.
I love on your note of the infight, I love when Batman gets in the staggered Muay Thai stance.
Oh yeah.
And he just is he's in such it's such an unorthodox stance, and he's just throwing down elbows and Talon doesn't know how to defend it. But yeah, okay, so awesome. So yeah, for me, my 4th, and this is why I prefaced at the beginning when I said, because his list will probably be much more accurate to what the films are. My rankings are much more mine just for me.
Well, we'll see.
For me, number 4 is Justice League Dark Apocalypse War.
Oh,
so yes, that broke my top 4. I mean, it's in game for the DCAU, you know. This movie is Oh, I don't even, like, in a lot of ways for me, it was more shocking than Infinity War and Endgame. Just because with Infinity War and Endgame, we kind of knew what was going on. And you knew since it was a live action movie with all these A and B list actors that, like, we knew Chadwick Boseman wasn't, or, excuse me, my apologies. We knew Black Panther wasn't actually dead, right? Like, we knew that they didn't cast Chadwick Boseman.
Obviously, we all know what happened, but, like, at the time...
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that. But, like, you know what I mean? So, like, or same thing with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Like, we knew he had 4 more movies on slate. We were like, he's not... So, for this, when in the first 20 minutes, half the league dies in a very gruesome way. It was just... We watched it together, like, opening night when the movie came out, you know, direct. And I remember we were just like, we paused it, and we're like, was that a dream sequence? Or, like,
was that real?
Did that just happen? Y'all know how much I love Darkseid. Darkseid, for me, besides Joker, is, like, my favorite villain in comic book media. I love Darkseid, and so seeing just this, like... It's very rare, except for the comics, especially if you get into like some of the older Fourth World stuff or the Jack Kirby run. But like, it's very rare that we get to see Darkseid being this just dominant world-ending force. A lot of times he's used as the threat, but that doesn't always come to fruition. A lot of times,
like in execution, they just kind of defeat him and he goes away.
Yes, in this, it's like, nope. Darkseid was ready, and I mean to the point to where he's got Batman as a brainwashed slave. He's permanently depowered Superman. He's got Martian Manhunter, Wonder Woman, Starfire as these robotic metahumans that he's using to do his will. I mean, it's just so... It was so well done for the beginning of this slate to start with war. Where Darkseid comes to Earth kind of, not nonchalantly, but kind of thinking he's going to take it with ease like all the other planets. And he doesn't. He ends up getting defeated. All his he loses in pretty defeating fashion. And then for the end of this saga to be Darkseid like, oh, okay, I actually have to think about how I'm going to fight you now. It does a great job of showing, if Darkseid really wants to be a battle strategist, it's pretty... It's pretty tough. That also being said, this movie shows us why Batman does the planning and not Superman.
Yes.
I love how at the very beginning, like, well, you know, Superman, you wanted to plan this, and Batman's like, yep, go ahead, man.
Yeah.
Like, gets everybody killed. And then, yeah, of course, you know, all the stuff at the end. The stuff with Damian and Bruce is great. Like you were talking about, between this and Batman versus Robin, it's probably the best character development we see. It's also cool to see Damian in this older, like he looks like he's probably like 19 at this time. He's gone back to the league. So like all that's great. It's cool seeing the Task Force X Suicide Squad with Lois Lane and Bane and Manson. Like that's cool just to see those characters one last time. And then yeah, of course it ends with Trigon and Darkseid fighting. Who doesn't want to see that?
Yeah.
You get the super somber, kind of sad ending of Flash having to reset the timeline once again. But all
bringing it full circle.
All that to say, I thought this was a beautiful way to end the saga that was the DCAU, and I love it to death, and that's why it's at my number 4.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right. So what do you got for 3?
It's Justice League Dark Apocalypse. That's my number 3.
Oh, okay. All right. Nice.
Yeah. So, I mean, we just talked about it, but one thing I do appreciate about this film, and that you can get away with, or not get away with, but you can do better in animation than you can do than in live action, is that all, if not most of the deaths in this movie, like, that's it. Like, they're dead. Like, they're not resurrecting, they're not coming back.
Gosh, like when Nightwing gets...
Yeah, when Nightwing dies, when Shazam dies, when Batgirl dies. Like, there's a bunch of, like, characters that we don't really see a whole lot in the universe itself, but, like, still had their part to play, that were just... They're dead.
Done.
Like,
is Green... What? I feel like I remember Green Lantern being gruesome.
Yes, because remember he was trying to do the chant Or like his.
Oh, that's right.
Doesn't he break his arm?
When Darkseid goes to Oa,
Yes.
that's such a good scene.
Yes. So like we don't get to see a whole lot of Jon Stewart in this universe, but like Darkseid just like breaks his arm and takes his ring and kills him, and like that's it. Like,
oh my gosh! And that's when he picks up Kilowog like a child and just goes.
Yeah.
And snaps his neck.
Yeah. Because I like we said, Infinity War was shocking, but once we walked out of the theater, it was like, oh well, they're gonna come back. They're gonna have their heroic hurrah, and they're gonna defeat. Whenever we watch this movie, we're like,
that's it.
Oh, that's it. Like they're not coming back, and like the only way for the heroes to really win is they just had to like reset everything. I mean, they technically defeated Darkseid.
They technically win, but it's basically
it's like at what cost?
Well, and it's almost like it's not even. It's such a. The reason I love the ending is like they kind of win, but not really. It's like they won the battle, they didn't win the war.
Right.
Because Darkseid still destroyed Earth. Mm-hmm. Half the population had been killed.
And there wasn't a magic glove where they could snap and everything went back to normal. Like it wasn't. It was.
Hey, Marvel. It's like there were actual consequences in this movie.
Right.
But yes, that was a dig. I hate Marvel and not having real consequences in their movies. If you couldn't tell by that.
Well, that's why Infinity War is the better movie. Well, because Endgame like whenever you have a TV show, there's always one episode where it's like, let's do clips from our previous episodes.
Oh yeah.
That's what Endgame felt like to me.
100th. It's like the Seinfeld 100th episode special.
Where it's like, hey, remember when we did this? And then they show you a clip from that, and then they go back to like that's what Endgame kind of felt like to me.
I'm with you on that. But yeah, I mean, all that said, that's why that ending's great is because, like you said, they won the battle of defeating Darkseid in a fight of blows. But Darkseid defeated the Justice League in the war of destroying and taking over the Earth. He did do that.
Yep.
And the only way the Justice League kind of wins is because Barry can go back and reset everything.
And they had to like release Trigon. Like they had to pull everything they had.
Yeah, not only now they have to deal with that. Like, although that is cool to end when Raven says something to Trigon and he goes, this is gift enough for me, daughter. And he's like, just leave me here. Like, let me run Apocalypse. But yeah, so okay, great. So then my second, I'm sure we might have this. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm on my third.
I started, remember? So
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm on third. Okay, so my third is the death of Superman.
Okay.
My third is the death of Superman. This is like peak DCAU. This was, especially if you watch the first one, Superman Doomsday, and like, oh gosh, when did that come out?
That was like 11.
2011, right? Yeah, 2011 or 2009 when that first animated movie came out. And that was one of those, everybody hated it. Now you go back and watch it, there's qualities of it you can actually like.
It's a decent watch.
But, I mean, this was one of those where, with the DCAU, whenever they were adapting comic book storylines, it was either a really bad miss, like Hush, or it was this, where it was like, oh my gosh, like y'all did this, like this was a 10. Death of I know this is going to be higher on his list. It's one of his favorites, so I won't go too in depth with it. But yeah, for me, as someone who has always liked Superman, but like Superman's never been in my top 3 or anything. Like, but I've always loved Superman. But for me, this story was just like something I love as a casual Superman fan. Is seeing whenever, because I feel like in the public eye, Superman is disrespected so much. Oh, yeah. And I love the stories where it's like, well, hey, I guess we actually kind of need you now. And it's like the writers really let you know, he may be boring or vanilla or whatever, but when it hits the fan, he's the only guy that can get this done, and no one else can.
Looks like a job for Superman.
So, I mean, the movie's great, with they do a great job of setting up Doomsday as a big of a threat as he is. Just him coming out of the ocean, killing the Atlanteans, and making a rampage into the city. Also, like, I would say probably one of the most emotional movies in this slate. Like, next to me, honestly, maybe next to Apocalypse War, the most emotional one in the slate. It's just, I mean, those last 8 minutes are brutal. So yeah, I love it. I also think this was one that doesn't get a lot of praise for how great it looked visually. I thought this one
yeah.
visually, aesthetically looked great. My only pet peeve with this movie is like Martian Manhunter's not touched in this saga ever. And then they're like, hey, bring in Martian Manhunter because we need to establish him as a threat. Like, Martian Manhunter jobbed out to, like, Doomsday. And I was like, oh, okay, guys.
I can, yeah.
But other than that, I have no flaws with it. I mean, it's great to see. The other thing that I love about it is that the way that they flipped. So with Superman Doomsday, it was fight, aftermath. Like, the fight was in the first 20 minutes of the movie, and then everything else was the aftermath.
Right.
I loved how in this, it was... we're doing the first 50 minutes of just build. And you're going to see the relationship with Lois. You're going to see Lois talking to Clark's parents and how their relationship's building. You're going to see Clark talking to some of the locals and how he builds a relationship as a reporter in Superman. You're going to see how the Justice League is trying everything they can before Clark can get there, and they just can't do anything. Their numbers are depleted. And then finally, you got 25 minutes left. And it's time for Superman to come in and
take care of business.
So yeah, for all those reasons, it's my number 3. So
okay,
what is your number 2?
My number 2 is Justice League Flashpoint Paradox.
Okay, that's my number 2 as well. So we can just we can go back and forth.
So this was actually the very first movie. It's the first one in the slate. But like, I actually remember the first time I watched this movie. I was on a bus coming back from a church trip.
Nice.
And somebody had like, that was like whenever, like if you had movies on your phone, you were the cool guy. Remember that?
Right, yeah.
He had Justice League.
Like he had it on iTunes?
Yeah.
Oh,
and then he like downloaded it, we watched it, and I hadn't seen it before, and I was like, this is so good. I've never seen something this cool before. But like the Flash doesn't really get like his own solo movie or like his own kind of thing to shine. This is the closest thing we get to it. It's the one time we get to see Flashpoint Batman on screen, he was awesome.
He's the second best part of the movie.
Yeah. Getting to see, because everyone really kind of knows the whole premise of Flashpoint Paradox, where it's a universe that's in chaos and everything's messed up. But like seeing Aquaman as like this brutal warlord dictator type was just that was awesome. Getting to see Atlanteans versus the Mascara and the Wonder Woman and all her cronies and all of that.
Really quick, that's one of, I think, especially in the movie, not so much the run, but like in the movie, I think one of the most unsung parts of that is like they do such a good job with the Atlanteans and the Amazons. Like it almost feels biblical. Like in the way of that, to broker a peace treaty, he has sex with Wonder Woman is like it's because it's like an old ancient code, like
it's like a mythic Greek
it
tragedy.
makes sense for the lore. And so he does this with Wonder Woman, and Mira finds out, obviously, as the wife is pissed, goes to try and kill Wonder Woman, and
doesn't end
well for her. And then not only does it not end well for her, Wonder Woman takes her crown and wears it as a trophy of like, I killed your wife. And it's just like in the dialogue, the way that it feels so very like they're like, we don't care about Earth. Like this is this is a blood feud. Like we will destroy the Earth before we give in to you. That's just that in particular. I think is one of the more underrated points of that movie that I think is pivotal to it, and I think it's very, very well done.
And then we couldn't talk about this movie without talking about Reverse Flash and the role that he plays.
It was me, Barry.
Yeah, and then because I think at the very end, whenever Barry's hurt, and he's just kind of like messing with him, kind of like beating him down a little bit, and he's like, "This isn't my doing. Like you did this. This is your fault." And he's like, "Huh?" And he's like, "You didn't go back to stop JFK or stop her from being assassinated or kill Hitler. Like you went back to save your mommy, and like caused all of this." And you're like,
"Well, the line delivery is great." He goes, "No, you didn't do that. You went to save your mommy because you missed her." And it's just like,
and caused the end of the world. And like I think that's one of the, we talked about the Atlantean thing, but like that's another part that's probably underappreciated. It's that like Zoom's the villain of the movie, technically speaking, but like it's Barry's fault. Like it's the hero's fault that all of this is happening. He didn't know it was going to happen, obviously, but like the fact that Barry Allen, the Flash, the superhero who's supposed to be the protector with the Justice League, like almost caused the end of the world being selfish. And then at the end of the movie, he makes the selfless choice of letting his mom die so that the timeline could be restored and everything goes back to normal. Like the sacrifice that Flash had to make, like him getting his heroic moment, so to speak, was very, very emotional. And then also the fact that not only did he do that, but he delivered the letter to Batman.
Oh yeah, bro.
Where you see Batman cry for.
It's like 2 drops. He
Yeah,
drops 2
but like
drops
he
on the paper.
didn't cry in Death of Superman, did he? He like kind of got emotional, but he didn't cry, right?
No, I think it's like he gets choked up, but like he doesn't.
Right, so like that's the only time, like I think on screen ever we've seen Batman.
Well,
like,
no,
shed
he cries when Damian is about to die in Apocalypse.
Oh, that's
War.
right. So yeah, like one of the only times we get to see
it's like
that.
one of 2 in
Yeah.
26 movies.
Yeah,
or whatever
and,
it is,
like you feel that you're like, oh man.
And he
like,
goes, "You're one hell of a messenger."
Yeah.
It's like such a. I mean, there's just even the more like minuscule stuff in that movie, like being able to see, like seeing the ground troops. When they're in Paris and when they're in Europe and seeing Deathstroke and Lex and Manta and Ocean Master, like they made sure to give you. Oh, also we can't forget Michael B. Jordan Cyborg.
Oh yeah.
Michael B. Jordan voices this is like before
like a
Creed,
7 foot tall.
like this mountain cyborg.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, for me, obviously, as big of a Batman fan as I am, I love the Thomas Wayne stuff. I love how there's such a clear distinction of nonchalant. I love the distinction of the 2 Batmans to where Thomas Wayne does it out of truly vengeance, and it's just it's the only way he can get through is by taking this anger out, and where Bruce does it for justice and he does it to protect, and Thomas is more of a vindictful purpose,
Right.
and so you see
He's
him
doing it more for himself.
he drinks out of a flask a lot, and he's like, "Who are you? Like, I don't care." And like, he's trying. You see him fighting the alternate version of Harley Quinn. He's trying to kill her. He's like firing double 45s at her as they're fighting. Like
The only reason she's still alive is because of Cyborg.
is because of Cyborg. So
Yeah.
like, there's so much that's great in this movie. Like you said, it's amazing to see the dichotomy and the choices of Barry. Of he makes the selfish decision, and then immediately he has to, against everything he has to go back and fix it.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, just how good is Reverse Flash in this?
Oh yeah, easily.
The character design, the voice acting. There's just so much about him in this specifically that's like, and I love that they set up where it's very like you see his ego, where they're like, wait, how did we get that Flash on that camera? He wouldn't have been able. And they're like, oh, he wants you to see him. And then when Barry does and pulls the ring out and it's the Reverse Flash suit, and he's like, what? Like just doing the mind games and everything else. There's so much about this movie that's great. But all that being said, what is your number 1?
If you haven't guessed already, it's The Death of Superman. That's my favorite DCAU movie. He briefly mentioned how it's probably one of the more emotional movies that we've gotten. Well, I remember the first time I watched this, like after obviously it's in the title, after Superman died, I didn't realize I was literally sitting up like this and I had a blanket and I was like clutching like this the entire time watching it. And I didn't realize I was doing that until after he died, and I kind of like took a sigh and I was like, oh, I was like...
You were in it.
Yeah, I was like in that movie. But kind of like what you were saying, like we really get to see the, number one, the heart of Superman, because, he's doing stuff with Lois, and like you actually get to see their relationship, because I think that's glossed over a lot in a lot of other media. But like you get to, it's not just like we're Superman and Lois, we're supposed to be together. Like it's an actual like well put together relationship.
It's not just slapped together.
Right, and she's like, I feel like you're hiding something from me, and he's like he finally is honest with her, and he's like, I'm Superman, I'm trying to protect you. And then like that moment where he gets the call from the Justice League when he's sitting in the diner. And he had to go, and he's like, I have one last secret, I love you.
Yeah.
And then he flies away, and he doesn't get to actually say it or like talk to Lois. And then you have the payoff to that at the very end, where Doomsday has beaten Superman down and he's like injured, and he's about to go kill Lois. Like Lois shows up and he's about to go kill Lois.
Oh my gosh, dude! How good is when she's just sitting there throwing rocks?
Yeah,
she's just
and
crying,
she starts crying and she goes, "I love you too, Clark." And Superman's like, does his Super Saiyan power up and snaps Doomsday's neck, but like, and it costs him his life.
The director's choice of that, by the way, if you haven't seen it, just in your head visualize. It's probably a 120-yard difference, 100-yard difference, something like that, between where Clark is beaten down and where Doomsday's approaching Lois, okay? As soon as she says, "I love you too, Clark," and Doomsday, like, rears back like he's about to kill her, all the music cuts, all the background sound cuts, and you just hear Superman screaming.
Yeah.
There's no other audio in that 8 seconds.
Yeah, and then you hear there's a sonic boom. He flies in there
breaks
and
the
then
sound barrier.
Snaps his neck.
Like, also, not only does he snap
around.
his neck, he literally just double fist punched him in the jaw and 360s his neck on his own body.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then finally once they hit and they fall down, the audio comes back in.
Right.
But the choice to make those like 20 seconds silent was beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And like I said earlier, you get to see the heart of Superman because as he's dying, he's like, "Did I do it? Like, did I save everyone?" And Lois is like, "Yes, you did it. Like, you can rest now." And he's like, "That's all I ever wanted. I just want to make sure everyone's safe." Just like a good, honest, guy.
Dude, I don't understand how people don't like Superman. I don't get it.
Yeah, because this century, the 21st century, has been plagued by so many like dark outcasts, and I love those type of heroes. Don't get me wrong, but you have your morally ambiguous characters that like they do right things, but maybe for the bad reasons, or like they do bad things, but for the right reasons, or whatever. But like when you have a character like Superman, like Captain America, but specifically like Superman, where he does the right thing for the purpose of he just wants to make sure everyone's safe, and he's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. It's like we need more characters like that. And we get to see...
Superman's John Cena, is what we're saying.
Yes, and we get to see we don't really get to see Superman a lot where he's actually he's actually sacrificing everything to defeat the villain. And right here we get to see that, yes, he might be near invincible, near godlike, but he still is willing to risk his life to make sure that everyone is safe and everyone's like okay.
Well, because the main thing there is like he probably knew he was gonna die.
Yeah.
Like, because you can tell through that fight where he's like, "Why am I not like?" When he's starting to get hurt, he's confused, and then he's like, "What is this thing? Why is it not going down?" So like Clark probably had a pretty good idea that right before he loaded up to launch,
he's like, "This will probably be the end.
This is probably gonna be it. I'm gonna have just enough left to get this out, and I'm probably gonna die doing it." But it was like it's just it wasn't a thought. It wasn't a let me think of a different way to do it. He's like, this is just what I'm gonna have to do. This is the
only way I can do it.
This is what I have to do.
Yeah.
So
and getting that golden age heroism in like the age of morally ambiguous characters is just it's a breath of fresh air. It really is, and that is why it's my number one pick from the DCAU.
All valid reasons, sir.
So what is your number one?
My number one's Batman versus Robin, baby.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Like I said, guys, this is not the best one of the slate. It's my personal number one. Batman versus Robin for me is bro, Court of Owls is like in my top 3 favorite comic book runs of all time. Like I love like y'all don't understand how much I geek out on the Court of Owls. I had in my old office, I had a little owl paperweight, and I remember one time somebody asked me, they were like, "What's that for?" And I was like, "Oh, I just like owls." And they were like, "Well, that's kind of weird." And I was like, "Well," and I pulled up the Court of Owls on like just the image, and they were like, "Oh, that's pretty sweet." Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, they're pretty cool." Something about, I don't know what it is, but they're just one of those characters, one of those groups that like, when I was a kid at 15 and that story came out, I was just like it just glued. Sucked me in.
Yeah.
So, and but that's always the stuff I've liked. So just for example, I have loved wrestling since I was a kid. The Undertaker was always Like, even when The Undertaker was a bad guy, when I was, like, a little bit older, when I was, like, 13, 14 years old, junior high, and, like, rest in peace, Bray Wyatt. Like, Bray Wyatt was always one when I was, like, in junior high, one of my favorite characters. The spooky, kind of culty, dark characters I've always been drawn to. And so Court of Owls is just that incarnate. Like we talked about 2 weeks ago, I am one of the rare people that like Damian Wayne as Robin. I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I like Damian as Robin. And one of my favorite things about this movie is we get the parallel of Damian as a son and Dick as a son.
Yeah.
I love that parallel they set up where, like, you get to see Bruce and Dick's relationship where Dick's really not his biological son, but he's more of his son than Damian is, just in the way the relationship is set up. I love the choice of making, I can't remember her name, I believe it's Natasha, that could be wrong. But the woman who's dating Bruce, who's the revealed as the head of the court.
Oh, yeah.
I love the idea that, like, because it's just so, like, I love when, like, a good woman story is told as a bad guy. When it's, like, not like a I'm a big, strong woman. Like, no, when it's, like, a woman you wouldn't expect, and she's kind of, like, the Talia al Ghul stuff in The Dark Knight Rises. Like, it kind of gets goofy at a certain part, but, like, just that idea, I'm like, that was so good. I love that kind of stuff. So, like, the idea that she's the head of the court, and she's been pulling the strings the whole time, and she's been playing Batman like a fiddle because she's beautiful, and Bruce is sweet on her, and all these things, and she knows what she's doing, and, Talon's great. This is the first time we see an actual Talon have a name, have a personality, have some kind of rank, which I think going forward needs to be the way it is always. I love the idea of having like a lieutenant rank Talon. As you touched on, the action choreography in this is from beginning to end. I mean, even at the beginning when Batman's fighting the 2 or 3 Talons at the museum.
Yeah.
And he's almost like, he's fighting, but he's trying to figure out as he's fighting. He's like, what am I, like, what's happening?
What is this?
Like, he can't figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And he almost dies fighting them because he's just so unprepared and didn't understand how to fight these things.
Had the two, what are they called? What Raphael uses?
Daggers. They're like 2 little daggers.
Or sais, is that what they're called?
Seeths or sais.
Yeah, but like he had 2 of them like lodged in his back.
Right in his shoulder blades.
Like, Alfred, I'm gonna need some help.
Falls through like a 3-story glass pane roof. You know, the stuff. Also, we get to see the Hellbat suit. We get to see Alfred with the shoddy taking out Talons. That's awesome. And then especially just those first 8 minutes of that where it's Nightwing and Batman trying to defend the house is great. It's so good. The stuff with Damian and like having to at first being like, my father's a weak man. Also the fight between Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah, well obviously we can't forget that.
The fight where he's like, do it.
Yeah.
And Robin doesn't do it. But just like, there's so much of that movie is just done so well. To me, it's the best Batman adaptation in the entire 16 movie run. So yeah, for all those reasons, that is my number 1. Love it to death. It's like we said, guys, at the very beginning of this, because I'm sure some people are going to think I'm a Batman fanboy. I am. That's why it's my favorite.
Obviously.
That's why it's my favorite. But all that being said, we hope y'all liked this. This is something that we kind of are going to try and make more frequent. Just kind of like, instead of doing, we've got the 4 shows in rotation, right? Our 4 standard shows for things like this. We're going to have other segments, but we just kind of do them in series.
Yeah.
That's not a word. Series. And just, you know, mix it up. So yeah, there will be more of this to come. Like we said when we started this 2 weeks ago, there will be something to do with Star Wars in the coming weeks at a certain point. So be on the lookout for that. But all that being said, we hope you enjoyed our DCAU rankings. And off of that, we're going to go straight into Read of the Week. Okay, so this week's Read of the Week. We are, speaking of Star Wars, we are going to go with the Thrawn trade. Okay, so this is a little bit more obscure. Wanted to give y'all something that had some depth, give you some lore. As someone who is more of a Star Wars comic consumer than I am a movie and show watcher, love this thing. All right, Thrawn is like, if you haven't watched Rebels, if you didn't watch Ahsoka, which like even in Ahsoka they blue-balled teased him for like, what was it, 5 episodes?
Something like that, yeah.
Like way too long. But yeah, Thrawn, like the best way I could put it is like kind of similar to what we were talking about a couple weeks ago. He's very like a comic book Sinestro. Sinestro and Thrawn I've been like, they're very similar.
Yeah.
They're just very cold, calculated battle strategists that like, in terms of, which Thrawn's definitely better at it than Sinestro, but just in terms of idea.
Right.
But this is great. So this is basically, it's the origin of Thrawn. You see where Thrawn came from. You see his planet like on the back, right? So like you see his transition from where he was at to being Thrawn, right? This book gives you a lot of cool stuff. You get to see him interact with the Emperor. You get to see him interact with Darth Vader. You get to see him climb the ranks and have to deal with some adversity through the, I don't even know what you would call it, the Imperial
ranks,
yeah. You know, him going, just like basic stuff, like it's very military, like chow hall training, people throwing blows they probably shouldn't, things like that. You get some very interesting relationships through this. You get to see how Thrawn reacts, and one of my favorite things in this book is this really, really, really delivers the point of Thrawn is always thinking and planning, like always. It doesn't matter what's going on, even if it's just a normal, hey, how are you doing conversation, he's always thinking about ulterior motives, how he can go about something, how he can use something later if he needs to. And this book does an excellent job of that. It's just a good one, very similar to the Darth Maul one we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's just a good one to have on your shelf. It's going for $17 right now, US. Yeah. It's a pretty thin trade. You can burn through it. I think I read this thing in like 2 nights. It's the good standard Star Wars comic book art. You know, Marvel has always done a really good job with the illustrations for the Star Wars books. You get a lot of cool variant covers in this. There's a lot of good extra content, and I would say it's a how am I trying to describe this? It's very, if you like Star Wars and you just want something different, this is one of my favorite things about Star Wars is when they give the obscure characters time to shine. Yeah. And I know Thrawn is becoming kind of no longer a super obscure character, but for a long time he was. So, you know, like those are some of my favorite stories to read from Star Wars. Is as much as the Darth Vader runs are great, it's cool to read a Thrawn book. It's cool for them to, you know, go and add layers into the lore, and this is something that you can pick up, and it absolutely does that. The other thing this does a great job of, you don't really need to read anything else after this. Like, once you read this, you understand Thrawn. So going into the new movie that's coming out in a couple years, if you want to go back and watch Ahsoka, if you want to watch Rebels, you understand Thrawn as a character. It does its job. It's a great, it's just a great, simple addition to your library. So yeah, go pick this one up. Okay, we're closing out episode 21 we're back on rotation. We're on the first week of rotation with another Versus segment.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be seeing some recurring categories. We'll also be seeing recurring categories with switching. So last time we did this, we did Jedi and Sith. I was picking Sith, he was picking Jedi. We flip-flopped that one. We've got some fun categories like we did Batman villains last time. Now we're doing Spider-Man villains. So we'll just go through. We've got some good categories. And yeah, why don't you kick us off?
All right, so for our first category, we have Jedi and Sith. Like he said, we switch, so I'm doing Sith and he's doing Jedi.
Yes.
So, for our very first contestant, for Sith, I have Darth Bane.
Okay, for Jedi, I picked post-Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
So, like, peak Luke Skywalker, from my understanding of what you've told me.
Okay, so that actually is a really good fight between the two of them. So Darth Bane is, remember how I told you that there was a Jedi and Sith like war?
Yeah.
Thousands of Sith and thousands of Jedi. So he was like a leader of the Sith army, and he was able to, so obviously the Sith were defeated. He was one of the only survivors of that war, and he was the one that came up with the rule of 2. And he is considered, besides maybe Plagueis, he's considered one of the most powerful Sith of all time.
Okay, so I mean, I guess my argument would be is something that I'm not a massive Luke fan. I just picked this because I knew it was a good pull.
Right.
From something you've told me, is that there's not really many people that could beat peak Luke. Like you've told me that peak Luke Skywalker is better than peak Anakin.
Yes.
So that logic,
that is true. But when you start, so like if you're talking about Sith in the original trilogy and in the prequel trilogy and all of that, Luke the Luke you're talking about could definitely handle business with those guys. So like if you put Luke against Pete Dooku or Grievous or whoever, like he's probably going to win that. But if you go further back to the when the Sith were extremely powerful, and you take the most powerful Sith, which is Darth Bane, I don't think he would win that.
Could Luke beat the Emperor? Could peak Luke beat the Emperor?
Probably. You mean like sword battle?
Yeah, like if they're in a fight.
Yeah.
So then you're saying Bane is more powerful than the Emperor?
Yes. At a certain point, he was, yes.
Interesting. Okay.
He was the one. He's considered the forefather of the modern Sith. Like he was the one because you have the Sith, they went into hiding for 1,000 years until the prequel era, but he was essentially the one that started the rule of two. He was the general in one of the leaders in the Sith army that was fighting against the Jedi.
Okay.
During that war that was happening between the two of them. So,
I mean, yeah, you know more Star Wars than I do, so I'll take your word for it on that one.
I would have, as much as I love Luke.
I was gonna say, and you're a Luke guy, so if you're telling me that Luke wouldn't win that, I believe you.
I would have to pick Darth Bane.
Okay, all right. So, starting off, 1 point for the boy. All right, so second round, we are going with sidekick. Sidekick. So, who is your sidekick?
I'm not exactly sure if this is considered a sidekick, but I went ahead and did it. I have Miss Martian.
Okay, it's fine, because mine's kind of a sidekick, but kind of not. War Machine.
War Machine. Okay. I think Miss Martian would take that, you think? You don't think? Yeah, but
as much as I love the Martian Manhunter lore, do you know a lot about Miss Martian?
I just know that she's basically Martian Manhunter.
So
like a teenage girl.
Yes and no. The only reason I would say that War Machine.
Are you gonna pull like he has fire weapons?
Well, no, I'm going to pull that she's not as powerful as John.
Well, I knew that.
She's not as powerful as John, and War Machine, not only does he does have a bunch of fire weapons.
Right.
Not only that, the armor that Tony's equipped with, that he's given War Machine, has a bunch of sonic weaponry on it, which the Martians are also susceptible to.
Oh, I didn't think about that.
So, as I would like for Miss Martian to win that, but right. I think War Machine would probably just I think Martian Manhunter would beat War Machine. But I think
you don't think?
No, I think just from in just terms of a fight, I think War Machine would kind of overwhelm her. Because the other thing you have to keep in mind with Miss Martian is, especially if you like watching Justice,
I also know that she's not nearly as smart.
She's not as fight IQ. She gets in, if you watch Injustice, you see it, she gets in her head a lot when she's fighting. And so if she got that overwhelm offense of War Machine, I don't think she'd be able to combat that.
Yeah, that makes sense. I might have to give you that one.
Okay.
At first it doesn't make sense, but yeah, that makes sense.
Also, not even if you're going off of like MC, if you're going off like comic book War Machine, like War Machine's a dog.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That I do know. I do know comic War Machine's way better than movies.
Yeah, so we're all tied up 1-1.
Okay.
Going to the third category, which is Spider-Man villains.
Spider-Man villains.
So who do you got?
I have an obscure Spider-Man villain that
so do I.
has not really been in a whole lot of comics. I have, let me see if I can get this pronunciation right. Morlun.
Morlun?
Morlun.
Okay. I have Taskmaster.
Okay. I knew you were going to pick that. Okay, but here. I know, because I actually, for whatever...
And I'm not picking Black Widow I'm picking comic book Taskmaster.
I know. Funny enough, when I was a kid, there was actually a comic that I read that had him in it.
Morlun or Taskmaster?
Yeah,
Morlun.
So, obviously I read this when I was in elementary school, so I don't remember a lot of it. But what I do remember is that not that he has similar powers to Taskmaster, but essentially what he's almost like an unstoppable force. Like Spider-Man has had, I don't know if you've seen that comic, but like Spider-Man was essentially running away for most of the battle. Like he was able to...
Yeah, he's playing defense.
Yeah, he's playing defense. And from what I remember, the only way that they were able to defeat him is there was some like magic totem, because He's like a mystical, magical character, kind of. So, and he absorbs like life force from other people, especially when it comes to like spider powers.
Metahumans, yeah.
Yeah. So, from what I remember, the only way that Spider-Man was able to beat him, he got some totem, and then there was like some old guy who also had spider powers, and they teamed up and like finally killed him with the totem or whatever. So, obviously, I know Taskmaster is a very formidable. We're not talking MCU. We're talking comic books. Like, it's a very formidable foe, but if you have somebody who has the ability to drain life out of people, and the only way that he can be killed is through this totem or whatever, obviously, I don't think Taskmaster will be able to get that.
So then my defense would be a couple things. Taskmaster, number one, especially if you played the first Spider-Man game, he would have to be able to close distance on Taskmaster, which is very difficult. And also, it wouldn't be, because I know a lot about Moreland, it's not the same kind of drain when it's not a metahuman. Okay. So it's a much slower, it doesn't have the same impact. He's not like Parasite. Right. And then my main defense would be is Taskmaster has mastered the fighting of Spider-Man, Captain America, most of the Avengers. He's got their battle patterns memorized, and he's a perfect mimic of them. So he would be able to, if he's using Spider-Man's fighting ability and it's not working, he can switch to Cap. He can switch to Hawkeye, Black Widow, Vision. He can switch to who he has to switch to. My defense would be, as I think Moreland's very much so a one-trick pony, and I don't know if he would be able to, number one, to close the distance he would need to on Taskmaster, especially with the weaponry he's got, on top of the fact that if he's constantly switching so he can't figure out a fight pattern, he's constantly giving him a new look. I don't know if he'd be able to submit Taskmaster if he's constantly switching fighting.
Okay, here, I'll ask you this because, like I said, I read one comic when I was in 5th grade. From what I remember, he was basically, like Moreland, he was essentially, like, invulnerable. Is that not correct?
Yes and no. So, like, but that's where that would come in, right? It's like, that's where he's kinda, but that's where I'm saying with the weaponry, he's not like unsusceptible to weapon attacks. Right. And so with the weaponry that Taskmaster has, and so if he wants to switch to Bullseye, if he wants to switch to the Punisher, he can figure out, like, he's an expert strategist in battle. Right. And so I think it would be, because it would be hard for Moreland to close distance on him, I think Taskmaster could keep distance long enough to figure out what he's got to throw at him. And I don't think Moreland would be quick enough to figure out how to beat him if he's constantly switching, especially with the weapons he has.
Yeah, I can give you that one.
Okay.
But I think also it comes down to the fact that I'm not as educated on Moreland, so I don't think, like, the argument you're making makes total sense. So I'm just
yeah.
So I'll give.
Yeah, I mean, I know a little bit more about him than you do, but not a lot. So if there's some obscure Moreland fan, you can let us know in the comments if we got that one wrong. But I will take the win.
Okay, so now we're moving on to Gadgeteer. So this is just anybody. Basically, their powers come from gadgets. The only people we can't use is Iron Man and Batman. So for my Gadgeteer, I have the Atom.
What?
The Atom.
Yeah, but the Atom's got metahuman powers. That doesn't come from his gadgets.
He uses the belt. That's what makes him grow and shrink.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's my. Anyway, my brain just blanked.
Were you thinking of what's the silver guy's name?
Yeah, okay, so I picked Cyborg.
Cyborg. Okay. Oh, that would be interesting. Because my thing is it's like if you've got the Atom, he can just shrink down and go destroy whatever circuits.
In theory, I guess what I would say is Cyborg doesn't have basic circuits. He's got a mother box living in him, and
That is true, but I also do know that I don't remember the Atom's alter ego. What his name is? It's not Hank Pym, obviously, but I do know that he's extremely smart scientist. And we have,
he's like one of the smartest men in DC.
We have seen, like, even in the Justice League show, whenever that parasite meteor or whatever came down, he was the only one that could go in and figure out like how the technology worked and how to destroy it from within. And I'm very positive that he could do that to Cyborg.
Well, so let me ask you this then. I'll ask you a specific question.
Okay.
Since we know that Cyborg's armor and gadgets are not, he has a built-in defense. He doesn't have to activate things. They do it on its own. Mm-hmm. What would your argument be for the Atom? Let's say he was able to shrink down. And some of the other thing is the way Cyborg's armor isn't like Iron Man's.
Right.
It's like welded to, like it's embedded in his skin and bone. So like there's not a lot of openings for him to get into.
I know that, but there's still there
so
would be enough.
My question would be, let's say he in theory was able to get into somewhere he was able to get into Cyborg's armor.
Right.
How would you say he fights off the base defense system in Cyborg's suit that activates on its own through the mother box?
Well, we saw it in that episode I was just mentioning. There was like a bunch of things that came to attack him, like a what is it called? Like an immune system for the heart, or because he was trying to destroy the heart of whatever meteor this was, and there was a bunch of things that came after him as like an immune system of this meteor thing.
Okay.
And he was able to fight him off.
Okay.
So I have a feeling that if he were, again, like I said, I think that Cyborg, like you said, it's not like Iron Man, so it's a little bit different, but I do think that there would be enough for him to get in there and disassemble enough to where it would render Cyborg, at least, if he's not going to kill him, but like at least render him like incapacitated for the time being.
I don't have an issue giving you that one, only because I know I'm not a massive Atom guy, and I do know, though, that, especially for fans of the Atom, I know that the Atom, especially in comic books, is very underrated in terms of his power and ability.
Well, not only that, but his intelligence. He's
I know he's a very underutilized character, and I do also... I think it would be one of those things where if they fought 10 times, maybe the Atom wins 6 and Cyborg wins 4.
Yeah, I could
so
see
he
that.
has just a slight edge over Cyborg, so I don't have an issue giving that. So, okay, we are 2-2 going into the final round. So our final round is street-level characters.
Yes.
Who is your street-level character?
I have Green Arrow.
I've got the Punisher.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what your argument is here.
Okay. So here, let me say this. So we both know that both of these heroes are willing to kill. So that's very much on the table.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of times when people think of Green Arrow, they just think of a silly version of Robin Hood.
Yeah.
And I do know that the Punisher can be very ruthless in his...
yes.
What am I trying to say? In his pursuit of his target. So, but we also do know that Green Arrow also has a temper on him, and that he could snap and also be very ruthless. So the only argument that I could really come up with, because both of these heroes are lethal heroes, meaning they're willing to kill people. The only argument that I could come up with is that if Green Arrow were to somehow close distance, I think that Green Arrow might be able to take him like down physically, because we also do. Punisher is very much of a physical character, but he's.
I was going to say Punisher's also got a much bigger size difference.
Well, no, I know that, but I'm saying Punisher's more of like a brawler, like when it comes to his fighting style, and Green Arrow is very much like. I mean, obviously he can't beat Batman straight up, but he does have the ability to keep up with Batman in a fight. So my argument would be, if Green Arrow could somehow close distance and they were able to throw hands, I think like kind of what we just said about our previous argument, that if they were to fight, maybe Green Arrow wins 6 and Punisher wins 4.
Okay.
But I think also, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not super educated on the Punisher. I know about him, but we also know that Green Arrow is very much a marksman, and I do know that...
So the Punisher's an expert marksman.
Okay. I didn't know if he was like a...
Punisher's expert
spray
marksman.
And pray kind of...
No, like he can use any weapon and pinpoint it. Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay, so I have a question. Do you think that the Green Arrow could beat Captain America?
You might be able to go toe-to-toe with him. I don't think you'd be able to beat him.
Okay. The Punishers beat Captain America in a fight.
Well, shoot. We almost had it.
You almost. My other thing is also, I didn't want to kill your argument I'm a massive Punisher fan.
Right.
I didn't want to absolutely kill it. This is me being brutally honest, dude. And as someone who loves Green Arrow, if Green Arrow tried to close distance on the Punisher, that would go really bad.
You think? Well, because I've always heard that the Punisher, like, obviously he's a tough person, but like in his fighting style, he's just kind of a brawler.
Well, because the other thing you have to remember is he was like an elite level SEAL team captain.
Oh, that's right.
So
he was in the Marines, right? He was like a Marine, but like he ended up getting promoted to one of those like obscure 8-man like elite teams, like elite squads.
So yes, my point would be is that the Punisher, to your point, he a lot of times does brawl because the people he's fighting, he doesn't have to be super articulate with this. He can just kind of go maul some dudes down with his hands. But if he has to like actually fight, he's pretty. That's one of the reasons Punisher is one of my favorite characters, is because 9 times out of 10 he's not using all the skill because he doesn't really have to. The other thing I would say is, especially if you watch the show, there's been more than one time where Punisher bests Daredevil, and I don't think Green Arrow is beating Daredevil in a fight.
Yeah. I'd have to give you that one, unfortunately. Hey, you're back on the winning streak.
We're back, baby.
Back on the winning streak.
We'll see if we'll have Family Feud in 2 episodes from now. We'll see.
I always get so close, and then it just doesn't work.
But you know what? You did break the streak.
We did.
You did break the streak. So
yeah,
that's it, baby.
Yeah. Well, hey, thank you all so much for watching this episode. If you would, please hit the subscribe bell. We're just trying to make a fun community here where we can talk about Green Arrow versus the Punisher and how ridiculous it actually is. But yeah, we post short form content on YouTube Shorts. You can find us at Gotham Graffiti Podcast on our socials, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.